Hello, Beginning Comp students. Today we are going to be going over our midterm texts. So it's really important that you have nothing out except for annotation tools and the packet that's just been passed out to you. No technology, no Chromebooks, and this cannot leave the room. If those things happen, we will assume academic dishonesty and it will result in the score of 0. So please, in the name of all things good, do not take out any tech. Leave those Chromebooks in your backpack. Make sure you do not take this out of the room. Leave it on your desk. Don't absent-mindedly put it in your backpack and take it out. They will all be collected before the end of the period. We are going to read through these 4 sources, and then following each source, we're going to pause the video for 10 minutes so that you can work with your team to complete the graphic organizer. What claim is this source making? What's its position on banned books? How do you know that? Right? What does it do that lets you know that? What are some of the details from it that you might pull as support? And then in your own words, what's their thesis? What's their why? What do they believe? Why do they believe it? In your own words. And this will help you when it comes to writing your own argument paragraph on Friday for the final. You'll already be familiar with the texts. You know exactly where to look when you start to pull your own evidence. We just want to give you a little bit more support with this task. All right, turn to source A. Follow along with me. I recommend you annotate the text as we go through it. Circle unknown words, underline or highlight main ideas, write comments or questions or reactions in the margins. Be an active reader as we go through. All right, so the first source, source A, source 1, is called Do More to Shield Kids from Explicit Books. The following article was published in a daily newspaper. The author, Mark Stewart, represents the Southeast Valley's District 1 on the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. He served on the Chancellor City Council from 2017 to 2024. Governor Katie Hobbs signed 2 bipartisan bills, House Bill 2112 and House Bill 2195, in May, designed to help protect Arizona children from sexually explicit content online. It's encouraging to see leaders come together around one simple truth. Protecting kids from sexually explicit material is not a partisan issue. It is a moral responsibility. As we celebrate this progress, we should also ask a critical question. If safeguarding kids online is important, then shouldn't we ensure they are equally protected in our public libraries? Maricopa County libraries remain one of the most trusted and accessible places for children to explore new ideas and information. They are not intended to be a venue where minors are exposed to inappropriate and harmful content. But explicit sexual content is on library shelves today and easily accessible to minors, often without parental consent or knowledge. Books like It's Perfectly Normal, This Book is Gay, Fun Home, a family tragicomic, Tell Me, and Genderqueer, a memoir, are presented as children's books. Yet they include graphic images and illustrations of sexual positions, oral sex, sex toys, sexual fantasies, prostitution, pornography, and different sizes and shapes of genitalia. The county library's district mission is to provide access and services that improve residents' quality of life. I am focused on fulfilling that mission, and doing so does not require access to explicit material. That's why I'm working with my colleagues to implement a parental choice program and additional measures to empower parents and provide the same level of care that we expect from public platforms. This initiative recognizes that age-appropriate boundaries protect the mental and physical health of our children, similar to the boundaries we place on movies, video games, and now online content. Parents should have a say in what their children can access, whether on a smartphone or in a public library. In response to growing concerns from parents and community members, we launched a pilot program at the Queen Creek Library in May. This program works as a service that provides parents with a tool to ensure their children can only access material that they deem appropriate. Parents and guardians who wish to participate can enroll in person at the library. The governor approved legislation requiring websites and social media platforms with sexually explicit content to verify that users are at least 18. I urge the governor and state lawmakers to bring this same sense of urgency to libraries statewide. Our kids' innocence is worth protecting, whether online, in the classroom, or on library shelves. I will continue to stand with parents and families as we advance this effort locally and call on state leaders to do the same. Now is the time to align our values with our policies. If protecting kids from sexually explicit content online is a bipartisan priority, it should be a bipartisan priority everywhere. All right. You are now going to pause this video for 10 minutes. You and your team can work on that graphic organizer. Think about the arguments that this is making. What is its stance on banned books? How do you know? In your own words, what's the thesis? All right, 10 minutes is up. We are now going to read source B. This one's written by Ira Wells. It's called From Mississauga to Florida, School Book Bans Are Spurred, from the Toronto Star. This one was exciting for me because I was born in Mississauga. Mystery fun fact. The following was excerpted from On Book Banning, or How the New Censorship Consensus Trivializes Art and Undermines Democracy. In 2022, Ira Wells, author and associate professor at Victoria College in the University of Toronto, was invited by his children's school to remove its library of books deemed explicitly harmful in their representation of groups of peoples. Wells wrote about it for The Star and revisits the larger issue in his new publication On Book Banning. In September 2023, a grade 10 student named Reina Takata entered the library of Arundel Secondary School in Mississauga, just west of Toronto, for the first time that year. Reina knew the library well. She ate her lunch there most days. But on this day, she was stunned by what she saw. This year, I came into my school library and there are rows and rows of empty shelves with absolutely no books, Takata said. She estimated that more than 50% of the school's library holdings had vanished. The CBC reported that this extensive pruning was part of a new equity-based book weeding process implemented by the board. This process, intended to ensure library books are inclusive, appears to have led some schools to remove thousands of books solely because they were published in 2008 or earlier. On the question of why the 15-year weeding cutoff was chosen, an internal training manual cites the importance of relevance and culturally responsive material. The answer goes on to emphasize anti-racism and anti-oppression in ensuring a fair and equitable process for the removal of texts. After the news broke, Ontario's then Education Minister, Stephen Lecce, ordered the Peel District School Board, PDSB, to halt the weeding process. In response, the board said that older books would be permitted to remain in school libraries that had yet to undertake the purges, so long as these books were accurate, relevant to the student population, inclusive, not harmful, and support the current curriculum. Even in accepting the directive to stop their expurgation of pre-2008 library books, the board was claiming extraordinary leeway to continue culling as they saw fit. Predictably, removing books based on their publication date brought perverse side effects. In the name of inclusion, Anne Frank's diary had been weeded from the shelves. As student Reina Takata, who is of Japanese descent, observed, "I think the authors who wrote about Japanese internment camps are going to be erased and that entire events that went on historically for Japanese Canadians are going to be removed." Reading about the book purges in Peel region, I couldn't help but recall how the principal at my children's elementary school had, the year before, mused about eliminating all the old books. Peel region, too, concluded that many older books were irredeemably problematic. They seemed to believe that student reading should take place in perpetual present. Insofar as history would be available, it would be filtered through the educational priorities of our moment, without the encumbrances of primary texts and their complicating, sometimes contradictory evidence. Because the culled books were causing harm, librarians were forbidden from donating them to charity. An internal trading document, Weeding and Audit Resources in the Library Learning Commons collection, called these books a health hazard. In addition to potentially containing mold, they are not inclusive, culturally responsive, relevant, or accurate. Racism, stereotypes, microaggression, lack of representation or erasure of communities, slurs, oppression, etc. Educators were explicitly told that deselected resources must be disposed of immediately, and that they should be packed up in such a way that they cannot be accessed again and to prevent relocation. The books were put into garbage bins and sent to the dump. The Peel Region Book Weeding Directive applied to 259 schools. Some of them threw out thousands of books. The total number is unknowable. In the wake of the equity-based book purge, some teacher librarians described their work to the media. Evelyn Refford weeded just over 2,000 of the 6,500 books in her library. Although I understand people's emotional reaction to the idea of books being taken from libraries, Refford told the CBC, they're only being taken from libraries because they're not serving the population anymore. Refford didn't explain what serving the population means. Her choice of that formulation over serving the students suggests a census-based approach to literary quality. But one can only assume, based on training materials, that the purged materials, including Eric Carle's The Very Hungry Caterpillar, were insufficiently identity-affirming. Other teacher librarians found the process to be rushed and unclear, and felt pressured to remove large numbers of books. It's hard to see these books that you love be thrown away, said one, who removed about 20% of her collection. The hardest part was some of the nonfiction books, like some of the animal books. I didn't quite understand why I had to get rid of those. After the story broke, the board claimed that it would pursue its equity goals through the addition of books. Despite potential cutbacks, said Paul De Silva, Associate Director for School Improvement and Equity, really what this has done is highlighted the importance of maintaining fulsome libraries. One teacher librarian said that she had received only a fraction of the money required to restock the shelves. It's going to take a lot of money to basically replenish what we've lost, because we lost a lot, she said. Bernadette Smith, a board superintendent, explained that equity-based weeding would continue. We want to ensure that when a student picks up a book that it's not causing harm, said Smith. Confronted with the specter of half-empty shelves, she said, it's not about the quantity of books, it's about the quality. Florida and Ontario have distinct political cultures, and nowhere are those differences more pronounced than in education. Florida's schools remain open for in-person learning throughout much of the pandemic. Ontario's were closed for 27 weeks over 3 school years, longer than almost anywhere else. While Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis attempted to ban the teaching of concepts related to racism, gender, and privilege with his Stop Woke Act, Ontario educators revised their curricula to foreground these very subjects. Yet different as they are, both jurisdictions have seen the arrival of book banning as a means of enforcing ideological conformity. The banners differ in their methods and goals. Florida's began with parental advocacy groups. Ontario's originated from within its institutions. Florida's book banning unfolds in raucous marathon meetings of local school boards. Ontario's unfolds under the cloak of secrecy. Students return to discover that their libraries have been noticeably emptied. Conservative Floridians cite LGBTQ+ indoctrination. Progressive Ontarians cite inclusivity and identity affirmation. But in the end, both resort to the same tactic, and for the same reason, to save the children from harm. Book banners in Florida and Ontario exemplify the new censorship consensus. It proceeds from the righteous conviction that, so extraordinary are the dangers posed by our enemies, whether those enemies are populist or woke, communist or racist, we must extirpate harmful books before they corrupt our children. Its defensive rhetoric cloaks its offensive intentions, justifying the symbolic violence it projects onto that which it deems intolerable. Neither side will own up to the word censorship. Indeed, a Peel Region training document provides teacher librarians with talking points to diffuse this touchy subject. The texts that are weeded are not labeled as bad or banned, but are rather deemed unsuitable for the student learning community as they are not student-centered and identity-affirming. It is essential to remove texts that perpetuate harm and oppression. Yet the board's actions clearly constitute censorship according to the definition provided by the Ontario School Library Association. Censorship is the removal, suppression, or restricted circulation of materials because they are morally or otherwise objectionable. Adds the OSLA, while the selector seeks reasons to include material in the collection, the censor seeks reasons to exclude material from the group. Any toolkit or manual intended to expedite the removal or restriction of library books is, according to the OSLA's own definition, designed to facilitate censorship. Parental rights advocates are similarly loath to identify as censors or banners. Keith Flaw of the Florida Citizens Alliance finds the term book ban to be incendiary and unhelpful. He prefers prohibited. This is really about protecting our children and keeping the harmful materials from them just like we do drugs and cigarettes, Flaw said. No one, it seems, self-identifies as a book banner. not even those working to remove books from libraries. The DeSantis supporter takes refuge in the knowledge that she is not pro-book banning, just anti-pornography, while the progressive educator knows that she is not pro-book banning, just anti-racist. But by removing and destroying books to prevent harm to children, today's censors are, ironically, creating whole new sources of harm. Book banning harms some children by depriving them of information or narratives that may have enriched their lives. It harms others by whitewashing or severing them from history and presenting a sanitized version of reality. It impairs their development as democratic citizens, teaching them that when confronted with a disagreeable or upsetting viewpoint, the solution is to ban, silence, or prohibit. It represents lost moral or educational opportunities. By preventing students from thinking through their own responses to difficult material, censorship also prevents them from discovering why they think what they do. It encourages students to conceive of themselves as passive receptacles of material that may corrupt or traumatize them, the very opposite of resilient. Book banning limits students' relationship to art and literature by encouraging a purely mimetic mindset, text as mirrors, and by discouraging an understanding of art as artifice, the product of formal conventions and techniques. Book banning is demeaning to young people. It assumes they cannot understand how language and social norms have evolved over time, and treats history as dangerous and unteachable. It lies to them by implying that they may be indoctrinated into adopting an LGBTQ+ identity by reading a book, or into holding the wrong views. Where the teaching of literacy should involve the cultivation of critical faculties, censorship strips students of their own agency and judgment in confronting ideas they may find challenging. Book banning is a form of coercion, an attempt to control not only what children read, but also what they think. Left unchecked, it poses two long-term dangers. The first is that students will become habituated to the conditions of censorship. They will grow up to be uninformed and passive, easier targets for propaganda and actual indoctrination, primed for authoritarian rule. The second is that they will internalize the methods of their censorious parents and educators and organize their own lives around a will to power. They will become the censors and the authoritarians. All right, we're going to pause here for 10 minutes. For the next 10 minutes, look at this second source, talk with your team, fill out your graphic organizer. All right, 10 minutes is up. We're going to move on to source C, so flip to source C in your text. This one is by Logan Tromp, Should Books Be Banned? It was published on University Wire. This article is an opinion columnist. Anyone who has taken more than one English class should be familiar with the concept of banned books. Not too long ago, it was commonplace to see news stories about parents going to their school boards because of the books that were being read in their kids' schools. Aquinas College, being an academic institution itself, should be concerned with such a topic. Considering that Aquinas College wants to provide the best education and information for its students, the question arises, should Aquinas ban books? If so, what books? And on what grounds? Aquinas College students should be able to have access to differing opinions on certain subjects, and they should have the opportunity to learn new information without being restricted. After all, what is more alluring than the prospect of forbidden knowledge? If one believes that a certain book should be banned because of the message it portrays or the contents within it, it would be logical that in due time, the book would become obscure due to its very nature. Bad ideas eventually die off. Truth remains the truth. Nevertheless, as with all social issues, the question of how something will affect children will surface. Books are very powerful, for they invoke emotion and persuade the reader in various ways. Also, it should not be a surprise that some subject material is not suitable for children of all ages. There are age ratings on video games and movies, for example. Books don't have this. Should there be an age rating system on books? That would be a topic for a different article. If it can be agreed upon that all books aren't suitable for children, then it would imply some books should be restricted until an appropriate age. The word ban carries a strong negative connotation, but restricting book availability is a reasonable decision. Who gets to decide what books to restrict in schools? Ultimately, it should come down to the individual parents and their child. No child should be forced to read something that they or their family deem unsuitable for their age, because books do have the power to harm their reader. Sexually explicit, violent, and mature themes will leave a lasting impact on a reader. While what is suitable for children will be debated, there are plenty of books out there that will not psychologically harm children, and these books should be encouraged. At the end of the day, everyone wants the best for the next generation of kids, but it will take many conversations within families and communities to achieve this. All right, we're going to pause for 10 minutes. For 10 minutes, go back into that text, complete your graphic organizer. You may work with your team. All right, 10 minutes up. Our final source, this one is by Sophia Weiss-Goldner. It's called The War on Books, How Book Bans Threaten Democracy and Education. The following article was published in a student-written monthly newspaper. Book bans are surging across the United States at an unprecedented rate. The book bans are not just an attack on literature. Banning books threatens intellectual freedom, critical thought, and education. In the 2023-24 school year, PEN America, the free speech advocacy group, reported the highest number of book bans nationwide, with over 10,000 books completely removed from school district library collections. This wave of censorship, organized under the Trump administration's Project 2025 agenda, primarily targets books about race and LGBTQ+ topics. At the center of this ban is Project 2025, an agenda that promises to dismantle the Department of Education, centralize patriotism values into public schools, and ban books written by authors of color, women, and LGBT+ writers. By restricting access to books about critical race theory and gender identity, Project 2025 suppresses historical truths and erases marginalized voices from the curriculum. Among the thousands of titles that have been banned are Genderqueer by Maria Cobade, 1984 by George Orwell, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky, and The Color Purple by Alice Walker. Organizations like Moms for Liberty and Project 2025 Counterpoints exploit parental concerns to justify censorship, positioning discussions about race and gender in schools as inappropriate for students. The intensity of book bans varies from state to state. Florida is leading the censorship movement, with over 4,500 titles banned since 2023. Conversely, some more progressive states, such as Illinois, Minnesota, Maryland, and most notably New Jersey, have enacted the Freedom to Read Act to prevent these kinds of bans. This law prohibits public libraries and school boards from banning books based on political or ideological differences. Project 2025 represents the most aggressive federal effort to restrict access to literature in modern history. Under its framework, publishers, teachers, and librarians who oppose censorship efforts face professional and legal repercussions. Banning books does not protect children. Instead, it robs them of their right to explore diverse perspectives and think critically. Removing books that address race, gender, and LGBTQ+ identities erase marginalized voices in schools. Depriving students of diverse literature diminishes their civic understanding and capacity for empathy. Project 2025 book bans are part of a broader government agenda to control historical narratives and censor the public's knowledge of systemic inequalities. Organizations such as Authors Against Book Bans and the American Library Association are writers, librarians, and editors leading the resistance against nationwide book bans by advocating for the fundamental freedom to read. Literature is a powerful tool that enhances the diversity of thought, creates empathy, and imparts knowledge. Books are key in shaping our understanding of the world. Authors Against Book Bans defend the freedom to read by implementing banned book clubs and digital library archives to ensure that censored books remain accessible to students and the public. Allowing the government to ban books without input from teachers restricts students from learning about racism and gender identity in schools. The fact that books about slavery, the Holocaust, LGBTQ+ rights, race, and sexism are among those banned is a clear sign of an incredibly dangerous political agenda. Education should empower individuals to think independently, not serve as a tool to manipulate historical truths and erase American history. For many, schools and libraries are often the only places where they have access to books that reflect their identities and heritage. The banning of books is inherently a banning of intellectual freedom, education, and democracy itself. Allowing these book bans to continue sets a dangerous precedent for the future of education and free thought in our country. It is imperative to resist Project 2025's book censorship to protect the fundamental right to access literature that educates, challenges, and inspires. All right, we are going to set our last 10-minute timer. In this 10 minutes, please review this final source and add to your graphic organizer. In 10 minutes, our guest teacher is going to collect back every single one of those packets. Please make sure you do not accidentally put it in your bag. Please make sure that this final 10 minutes, all text stays away. Once all of the texts are collected and the guest teacher has all of your texts back, then you may open your Chromebooks, and when you go to Google Classroom, go to Classwork, scroll down to the Roots section, you will see a link for the Roots 1 to 4 Booklet. You can play the booklet. You just have to click on the link and say play solo to review. If your team wants to host a game and play together, you absolutely may do that as well. But for these last probably 10 or so minutes of class, you have time to study ahead of tomorrow's Roots final. Thanks, friends.